All right. Again, I'm here. Thanks for those who are here already. See Chris is here. See Justin is here. I'm glad you're both here. You're both fellowshipping already. Praise the Lord. And again, I expected more people to be here, but again, I'll wait for another 4 minutes, as I always do, for people to come in. And when you're in, please let me know in the live chat and also hit the like button. Thank you very much. Tracy's here. I'm glad you're here, Tracy. Everyone that's here, if you haven't done already, hit the like button. Thank you very much. If you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe. Thank you. Consider becoming a member if you want, but it's not obliged. Praise the Lord. Curly Girl is here. Joanna is here. So that's good. Again, within 3 minutes, the actual class will begin. So 3 more minutes. Bridget's here. I'm glad you're here, Bridget. And Tammy's here too. Please let me know if you can hear me clearly. It's quite important. The Wi-Fi connection is good here. I just want to know if the YouTube browser, or if the YouTube works well in the browser. Was Real is here. I don't know what your name is. I'm gonna call you Was Real. Thanks for the thumbs up. Okay, sound is good. I'm glad about that. So the professional headset is working fine. I'll keep on using it for coming audio lives. All right. So again, I'll start at 4 minutes. So we have 2 more minutes to go. Oh, Curly Girl is here. Did I mention it already? Glad to have you, Curly Girl. All right. I will not be showing any visuals right now. I'll just do audio live. But information I'll be sharing, most of it you can just easily find in a Google search yourself. You can go to the government websites of the Malaysian government or Dutch government or whatever. I would not give too much weight to CNN and other mainstream media outlets because I figured out they are quite inconsistent. But hey, that's also one of the reasons I'm making this live stream. Christopher, I'm glad you're here. All right. If you're here, hit the like button. Thank you very much. An half a minute more. All right. I got the recommendation over here. So I can check that later on because I have a Rumble profile myself. All right. It's 4 minutes in. Shani is here also. You're right on time, Shani. Tonight, well, it's night for me. We're talking about this massacre that happened in the east of Ukraine. I mean, in the airspace of the east in the east of Ukraine, above the Donetsk Oblast. An oblast is a Russian or Ukrainian province, and it went like this: flight MH17 from Malaysia Airlines. It was a dual flight, so two airlines conducted the flight together. So the Dutch KLM, the Royal Dutch Airlines, in Dutch called KLM, used the code KL 4103, and Malaysia Airlines used MH17. There were 298 people on board, 283 passengers and 15 crew members. 193 people on board had the Dutch nationality. 4 people that sat in there had the Belgian nationality. Nobody survived. There were also 28 Malaysians, 27 Australians, 12 Indonesians, 10 British folks, 4 Germans, 3 Filipinos, 1 Canadian, and 1 from New Zealand. Now, the story goes like this. All right? The story is that the airplane flew in the airspace of Ukraine in the quote unquote war zone, and there was this missile, I believe a bug missile they call it, that the pro-Russian rebels in Ukraine received from the Russians, and they fired it on an airplane that passed. And later they found out, ooh, it's a passenger flight, and it was too late. That is the story. And over the years, people point a finger at Russia, and they even conducted a criminal investigation, and the decision was made to do the prosecution according to Dutch law. The Netherlands, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Commonwealth of Australia, the Kingdom of Belgium, the Kingdom of Malaysia, and the Republic of Ukraine both agreed together to prosecute the case according to Dutch law in 2017, which was 3 years after it happened. Russia did not participate in this because Russia always claimed that they had nothing to do with it. Well, I'm not here to debate the Russian involvement or to which extent it was or not, but you can find all this information out yourself. There is one incident here that I want to point out that happened 3 days before the massacre. There was a diplomat, a Dutch diplomat, that in Kiev that pointed out that the airspace above the east of Ukraine was dangerous. However, this information was not shared with the airlines in the Netherlands or the airlines that were transporting people from the Netherlands and elsewhere. Now, the Dutch government didn't really want to go into this, but later it came out that a report of this um, situation was handed over to The Hague, where the Dutch government is. The Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, said that, well, the diplomatic briefing of the 14th of July 2014 would remain a state secret. However, there was this other organization that, for one way or the other, they found a leak of the state secret and they revealed it. Now, the Dutch government in December 2014 also said that in the period of 15th of April till the 2nd of July 2014, possibly 11 airplanes and 8 helicopters have crashed above the east of Ukraine. Hereby, it wasn't clear how many, but also the cause was unclear, which is quite weird. So you can see that it looks to some type of cover up or, let's say, an affair in the Netherlands. Anytime there's some corruption or some embarrassment goes on in Dutch society, called an affair. So this seems like an affair to me, but it hasn't been investigated further, at least not by the official authorities or official mainstream media. So it goes like this. They blame Russia and they want to prosecute Russia since 2018, but they failed to actually take actions against Russia, even though there are already EU sanctions for Russia's attitude towards the Crimea. Now, one thing I already explained to you about politics. Politics is about the is about transferring the public's anger onto something else. Politics is when You have an organization or a cult or just a group of people acting out the conflict amongst the masses. That's it. So anytime something happens that's politically sensitive, don't just look at what happens. Look beyond it. What's going on? Some claims from Russian investigators are that Malaysian Airlines was about to go bankrupt and that they needed some insurance money. Well, I haven't gotten any confirmation of this, so I'm not going to say it's true or not true. It may be the case. But that doesn't matter also. What matters is the following: the response by the Dutch authorities, as well as the Malaysian authorities, or the response of all the countries whose citizens died in that massacre. The response is suspicious. I'm just saying as it is, the response is suspicious. Yesterday, I had a live stream about the Chris Crims and the Son of Throne case. And I've shown you, again, in that reflection, that there's some type of affair going on, some type of cover up, some type of embarrassment that both the Panama and the Netherlands wants to hide. And I told you, if I'm wrong, prove me wrong. I'm willing to be corrected. In this live stream, I'm telling you that this incident is not what it appears to be. And here's the thing: in mainstream media, there were mainstream media footage was shown to the public that's not consistent with the story. For example, if an airplane is blown out of the sky by a missile, that means that people in that aircraft, they all died, they all catch fire or some type of electric shock, whatever. That means the clothes of the people would be on smoke, and that means that also their personal items would be scattered. But on the ground, because remember, the airplane was 10 kilometers high, 10,000 meters. It was flying. I don't know how much it is in miles. We don't use miles here in Europe. Well, I believe in Britain they do, but not in the rest of Europe. We use a metric system over here. But anyway, so you mean to tell me an airplane is 10 kilometers high, is hit by a missile? How can a missile hit an airplane 10 kilometers high? That means that it was planned to take it down. You can't just see an airplane. Oh, there's an airplane. Oh, guys, get your missile. Oh, it's 10 kilometers high. Let's fire it. You mean to tell me that some rebels with no military experience and no formal backup from any nation state, that they got a small machine with some rockets in it, and they were able, without any advanced technology, to aim the missile directly at the aircraft? And the aircraft is moving, aircraft is not standing still. Sorry, but that's a bit odd. And if the aircraft is blown out of the sky, how come you have passports on the ground? Between the racks of the airplane, they found passports, and the passports were in good condition. What? Hold on, hold on, hold on. How did those passports get out of the luggage or the pockets of those passengers? You mean to tell me that the bodies were scattered all over the place? Some of the bodies were dismembered and all of that, but the passport survived everything? You could just go there and pick up the passports clean and well without any burning marks on the passport whatsoever? Oh, and look at this. The public fell for it. The public fell for it. When they showed those passports on the ground, say that's confirmation of the identities of the victims, I realized, come on now. Is mainstream media seriously thinking we're so that we all have brain damage? Come on now. This is a very dumb footage you're showing. Not intelligent at all. I expected from that point on there will be a mass criticism on mainstream media. I expect from that point on that people to revolt against mainstream media and call it out. Did that happen? Well, a few people did it here and there on YouTube or on other websites, but in general, the public went along with the narrative. And this is not a small thing. When mainstream media is so confident that they come with a bullshit narrative that's so ridiculous, even even a child that special needs, or even a child who has a mental how to say, even a child who's a bit mentally backwards, through some birth defect, even such a child can see this doesn't add up. I mean, what? And here it comes. Oh, here it comes. Months afterwards, it was quiet. So quiet. And I used to think, hold on a minute. Why aren't people talking about this anymore? 100, okay, let me check the numbers again. So I remain correct here. 193 Dutch citizens were murdered. Murdered. And for months later, people didn't even mention it. Oh, yes. Just like Tuti is saying here in the live chat. They did the same thing with 9/11. They found passports of the hijackers on the ground, even though the hijackers killed themselves with the airplanes in the so-called Twin Towers. Oh, Lord. So that shows me it's a ritual. That shows me that that means those mainstream media footages of those passports are a mockery of the masses. That's all it is. But the fact it remained silent for months and then for over 1 or 2 years, that was telling. And the thing is, if Russia was involved, Russia was not even in such a healthy economic and financial state. So, Russia not being in such a healthy financial economic state, Russia also having a lot of impoverishment, and Russia having internal divisions. Because I had Russians I was in contact with telling me that there's a tense climate here in Russia, a very tense climate politically. So Russia was internally divided. So Russia was at its weakest back then. So if Russia was involved, and Russia was also behind um, the issues that happened in Ukraine, why didn't it take why didn't they shut down Russia? They could have easily shut down Russia back then, because Russia was doing bad financially and economically. And socially, inside of Russia, there were a lot of civil there was a lot of civil tensions. So Russia could have easily be dealt with and shut down, like they're doing now with Russia, with those heavy restrictions. They could have done it back then. Hold on, hold on, hold on. So let me get this straight. The Republic of Ukraine and various other countries joined together to investigate it, and Russia doesn't be part of the joint investigation. What is that? If you're accused, or if people think that you're involved and you're innocent, you would say, hey, we're going to investigate together, find out what happened. We don't want to be associated with this. We don't want to be associated with people, with military folks or rebels taking down a passenger flight. Russia should have issued a statement saying, listen, if those pro-Russian rebels think we're going to support them, now that they've shut down aircraft with passengers, they can forget about our support, because we don't deal with terrorists like that. Russia should have called out the pro-Russian rebels. Did Russia do it? Russia do it? No. It's quite weird. And here's another thing. Wasn't 2014 not the year that this refugee crisis kind of began in Europe? Hmm. Let's look at the whole context here. There were so many political conflicts going on. In the Netherlands were political conflicts. I still remember those. Yeah, when are there no political conflicts in the Netherlands? But anyway, so that was going on. You had this whole thing in Syria going on, the civil war in Syria. You had scandals coming up in the United States under the Obama administration relating to Hillary Clinton also. In Russia, I already explained to you there was political tensions going on and societal tensions. Ukraine also had divisions, so there were political conflicts everywhere. And then I'm speaking on behalf of the net on the Dutch context now. Earlier that year, you had those two women going missing in Panama, and shortly after that, men, fair, or more, almost 200 Dutch people are killed. You're a sheet. That's just coincidence. There is no such thing as coincidence. Coincidence does not exist. Rashid, you sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just look at the facts. I'm looking at the context. And next thing, Canada. Well, let me look it up over here. I have it here in front of me. Canada had one citizen that died. New Zealand had one. United Kingdom had 10. How come that those countries show more interest in what happened than the Netherlands itself, who had 193 people dying? What about the relatives of those 193 people? What about them? There were Dutch people complaining, saying, why ain't Prime Minister Rutte doing much against Russia? Why ain't Prime Minister Rutte and the Minister of Justice doing more for us? I hear Dutch people complaining back then, 2015. Why aren't they doing much for us? And there was no mass revolt in the Netherlands against Prime Minister Rutte and against the Dutch uh, parliament. There should have been a mass uprising and mass hysteria against the Dutch authorities back then to force them to deal with this situation. Why didn't it happen? I can explain why, from a sociological point of view, that Dutch society, ever the um, since the 1800s, they don't really have this. Um, how do I say? They don't really have this motivation culturally to rise up. Dutch society since 1800, they have this attitude, man, just leave me alone, let it happen, just let me have my cup of coffee and let me have my little backyard. The last time in the Netherlands there was a successful revolt against corruption and neglect from their leaders was in 1795. That year, they kicked out the Prince of Orange, William V. William V was the father of later King William I. They established the Batavian Republic. But here's the thing, the Batavian revolutionaries were not stable. It became a big failure. So, and they had over, man, every 5 or 10 days they had a new president in the Netherlands. Every 5 to 10 days they had a new president. It was quite a big failure. You can look it up for yourself. So from 1800 and onwards, um, the Netherlands was kind of becoming like a dictatorship. So this disappointment is something that settled deep in the Dutch public. And since then, this generational curse emerged that the Dutch public does really want to revolt. Now, did no revolt at all happen? 1848 was a big revolt. And King William II was terrified of it. That's where we got this liberal constitution we have in the Netherlands till this day. But 1848, and it was calmed down quickly. Why? Because the public was hungry. There was famine in the Netherlands. Were about to turn on their leaders. But 1848, afterwards, persistent and consistent revolt against neglect from the leaders did not happen. And here's the thing: even Napoleon was horrified When Napoleon arrived at the Netherlands, a lot of the civilians just surrendered easily. It, they just said, "Hey, Napoleon, you want to do your thing, just leave us alone." There were some people fighting back, but Napoleon was thinking, "What the heck is this? Everywhere I go, try to reform things, people resist and revolt. I can understand that, but these people just surrender." Napoleon in 1806 made his younger brother Luigi king of the Netherlands. Well, very quickly, within just I believe 3 years, Luigi told just one day he left the Hague. He took a chariot to Paris. He arrived there after the weekend and told his older brother Napoleon, "Just take in the Netherlands. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm done." Now, I'm not being negative on the Dutch public here. I'm just telling you this is the history, and this explains this reluctance to have a collective public outrage. Now, recently, there has been a public outrage against the QR code that the Dutch government installed. Now they've abolished it. When that happened, I was thinking, yes, finally, some backbone amongst this population. Finally, I was rejoicing when that happened. For a moment, the historical curse was shut down. Well, I expected them to have this revolt in 2014 and 2015 when there was a lack of proper investigation, but hey, it is what it is. I want you to think about this. How come 193 people of your country are killed just like that, and you are reluctant to address it? Or can it be that you don't want it to be addressed? That's a possibility to look at it too. Now, let me use another incident. The United States claimed that the North Vietnamese military, somewhere in the 1960s, they attacked the U.S. Navy that was near in the Sea of Tonkin, or they were that the North Vietnamese military attacked them. They called it Tonkin incident. Later, they changed the source. It was two incidents, not just one. But then, a lot of journalists doubted the whole Tonkin incident story because the Tonkin incident was used by the U.S. military and by the U.S. government as an excuse to further uh, launch soldiers into Vietnam. There was already a struggle in Vietnam going on because they wanted the French to leave. Well, the French left, but America took over the south of Vietnam. So America started with the colonial power, something they made plain they would never do. So the Tonkin incident was the excuse to send tens of thousands of US soldiers into the war, and many of them just died. I have a nephew. You said nephew? Yes, I have an this I believe a 2 degrees removed nephew. He is from St. Thomas and he served in the US military during the Vietnam War. He even was there in Vietnam, but he didn't want to talk with me about it because he said he doesn't even know why he was there. And he still is hurt today by the relatives and not relatives, but by the people he lost. Some people lost relatives indeed. So a lot of people kept asking, why were we in Vietnam? It couldn't be explained. And US military just abandoned the south of Vietnam. They abandoned Saigon, similar to how Joe Biden abandoned Afghanistan in 2020. Now, it came out later that the Tonkin incident never happened. It was just something they made up and they fabricated just to justify dropping bombs on Vietnam and those nearby countries. So, when people were doubting the Tonkin story, the US government didn't want to address it. The mainstream media didn't want to stop talking about the Tonkin incident eventually. and for decades later find out that there was no Tonkin incident. But hey, m- millions of Vietnamese people died. They dropped many bombs in Cambodia. There's still landmines in Cambodia till this day that are left from that area. So Cambodia still suffers harm from that war till this day, all based on an incident in which America was victimized, but this victimization never happened. Now, am I claiming now that there was no downing of an airplane? I'm not doing that because I have no proof to say that there was no airplane that went down. There is evidence shows that there was a flight, so I'm not going into that. But it seems to me that this is another Dutch affair over here. Because if it comes out that the Dutch authorities were neglectful towards the safety of their own subjects, ooh, that would be a big humiliation worldwide. And not only that, Malaysia would also suffer a big reputation damage. And the Netherlands suffering reputation damage will also harm the EU also. So it appears that this incident was meant to be covered up as much as possible. How are you going to cover up the downing of an airplane? But anyway, sometimes those world leaders they're delusional in what they want to achieve. So the fact there was reluctance in addressing the issue, the fact there was not much public outrage about it, shows me that a lot of people in this country figured out quickly that there's some type of cover up going on. I'm not going to address topics that are not related to the topic of this live stream. Thank you very much. Thank you. And by the way, there was another Malaysia airline airplane that disappeared, MH370. And researched for myself, I researched this MH370 disappearance. That's one big rabbit hole in itself. I'm not going too much into it, but it appears that one of the pilots of that missing flight of MH370, that he had mental issues for a while. There were warning signals that something was wrong with this man, but still he was able to keep functioning as a pilot. So would we to blame then for all those missing people? Well, it should be Malaysian Airlines and the Malaysian government for not intervening. And for some reason, despite all the satellite technology of today, they still could not find where the wrecks are of that aircraft. There were aircrafts that crashed on top of the Atlantic Ocean, and several days later, wrecks of those aircrafts hit the shores of Brazil. So how come this aircraft cannot be found at all? It's a mystery. No, 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 no. It's a cover up. That's it. And the thing is, if Malaysia Air had this function, why didn't other airlines consider severing ties or lowering cooperation? There's also another thing. Look, all that this shows is that this MH17 thing is not what we're told it is. Oh yes, it was also a German pilot of what was the airline again? Was it Lufthansa or German Wings? Or I know anymore what the airline was this pilot of this German airline who committed pilot suicide and crashed everyone in the mountains. Pilot suicides sometimes happen. Yet, there's no worldwide, and maybe there is now, but there was no worldwide standard to check the mental health of the pilots. Also weird. And let's go further with this. If the public does have a public outrage because they realize there's something being hidden and they don't want to deal with it, well, that's cowardice on the Dutch public's part, to be frank, that they didn't look deep into it. But they people realize something's being covered up. And don't tell me nobody found out what it was. People did. They just don't want to come out with it because they want to be left alone. They want to keep their daily ease. The conclusion I came up with by checking the whole situation, and this is just a conclusion of me. You can challenge the conclusion, you can uh, counter it. Please do, because I hope I'm wrong. It's not the conclusion I want to come to. It seems to me that this was done on purpose as a blood sacrifice. This whole MH17 thing looks like a ritual to me. And here's the thing, let's codify MH17, okay? Because those Apollonians, they center everything around the sun god Apollo. Everything. They're obsessed with this creature, with this Nephilim Apollo. MH17, let's codify it. The M in Latin, which is mil, is 1000. 1000 in ancient Greek is Helios. Helios is another name for the sun god Apollo. All right? Let's go to the H. The H derived from the X, and the X is often pronounced as an H. So the H is actually an X, and the H is for Helios. And 17, 1 plus 7 is 8. What's the eighth letter? You got it, the H. The H derived from the X, and the X is abbreviation for Helios. So you have MH17, it's codified Helios, 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 or XXX, and the X has a value of 6 in the Greek numerology, so it's actually 666. So the flight number, they didn't choose the Dutch flight number. They chose the Malaysian flight number. The Malaysian flight number is codified 666. Helios, Helios, Helios. And that is a coincidence. Coincidences do not exist. So the name of the flight already is ritualistic. That is one thing. And then the registration number of the aircraft was 9M MRD. 9M MRD. You have the 9, which is an inverted 6, and then you have the M twice. 2 times 1000 is Helios, Helios. The 9 inverted is a 6 inverted, so the 9 is actually an inverted 6, so that's another Helios. 9M MRD is actually a codified 666 RD. So the registration number of the aircraft as well as the flight number are both codified 666 in honor of the beast. And people don't think there's something up with this. 9/11. What's between the 9 and 11? 10. 10 written down in Roman numerals is an X. Oh, what's X abbreviation of again? Helios. Okay. When you write 10 in Arab numbers, or when you write it down, when you pronounce 10 as letters, is Io. Io is ancient Greek for sun, and that refers to the sun god Apollo. 9/11 is actually a codified an X, referring to Helios. So, And there were two towers, duality. All right. So we can conclude now that MH17 allegedly, I hope I'm wrong, it was a ritual, a blood sacrifice ritual. And why would they do a blood sacrifice ritual like that? For the simple reason to develop societal bonds in the public, amongst the public. This is how it works. When there is trauma in the population, the trauma binds people together. When everyone bleeds, everyone is kin. When everyone is suffering loss, when everyone is suffering hurt, when everyone is hurted and depressed, they're all connected. And because they're all connected by trauma, they all get along better. That's how it works with fallen mankind. So blood sacrifices are done to maintain societal bonds, to get people to get along with one another. Yes, trauma bonds are used to keep worldlings on good terms with one another. And blood sacrifice has been going on since the far ancient times. Blood sacrifice never stopped. They just call it differently or they do it in a more covert way. So, can it not be that both Malaysia as well as the Netherlands, which both had unrest in the public at the time and tension building up, that they needed some relief mechanism, and that devil worshippers from both countries met together and decided we're going to do this. We know that airspace over there is dangerous. We shouldn't fly over it, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway. And you know we have another devil worshipper nearby who's on the team, and he will do it. And then we're going to make sure the mainstream media brings out confusing messages about the event, so that then people are more confused what really happened. And this confusion in the public adds to the trauma is already there. And this build up of trauma will lead to infantile attitude in the public. An infantile attitude simply means the public can't think properly for themselves anymore. And because they can't think properly by being exhausted, they just get along with whatever they're told. Do you understand now what I mean with an infantile attitude? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know. The goal is to get the public to be so exhausted by the traumatic event that they just say whatever it is. I just want it to stop hurting. That's what we want to achieve, and it works over and over again. But there were also other nationalities on board, so they also had to include the other people. There were other countries who also had to be in on it. And because all these countries are run by devil worshippers anyway, they're they're all on the same team. But here's what they forget: some relatives of the victims, or some of the people that knew the victims, are going to ask questions. And some people kept asking questions, and that's why they didn't want this to be in the news so often. Today, when you mention MH17 in the Netherlands, some people don't even know what you're talking about. Literally, some Dutch people don't even know what you're talking about when you mention MH17. And it's only, it's 2022 now, it's only it's almost 8 years ago. So less than a decade ago, 193 of your own people were killed, and they just went on a holiday or something, they were just blown out of the sky, and something like that is right in the back of your mind as something that happened centuries ago. The collective memory kind of forgot about it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Everything appears that this was a blood sacrifice. And the sacrifice worked. The sacrifice, the effect worked. The public did become docile and subservient. Unfortunately, it worked. So that was a mass deception conducted. It was a big psychological operation. Hmm. So some of you may have seen the funeral of this incident on TV. Maybe some of you will listen to this may have known people, or you know people who lost relatives to to that flight. Put put the emotional thing aside and look at the bigger picture. You've been conned. Am I saying that the Dutch government did it? No, I didn't say that. Because corporations can also do blood sacrifices covertly. They can. You don't need a government to do blood sacrifice. Corporations do it too. Only corporations are not allowed to go too far. That's it. And that may explain why in 2020, when that big crisis emerged, a lot of people just got along with everything and people weren't really critical what was going on. People fell for misinformation quite quickly in 2020 about that crisis that emerged back then. Now, if you look at the decade from 2010 to 2020, if you look at how many traumatic events happened to the public has been beaten down with fright. Now, this is not an excuse, but it's an explanation why so many people just got along with whatever narrative was presented to them. That's what those satanic rituals are intended to do, to exhaust you emotionally so you become an infantile, namely like a baby relying on others to give you emotional stability. That's the purpose of it. When a public develops an infantile attitude, you can spoon feed them anything and they'll take it. In order to keep the public in an infantile state mentally, you need to exhaust them emotionally with trauma. Then they become emotionally damaged, and an emotionally damaged population is easily to stir around. Any black magician understands this. Any black magician can tell you, honestly, every warlock can tell you that the best way to control a group of people is by exhausting them with trauma and hurt. Eventually, they're emotionally damaged because they can't process emotions, and mentally, they become lazy as a result. So anything you tell them, if you come with enough repetition, they'll get along with it. It's an old trick from the book and it works 9 out of 10 times. It will not work on everyone, but it works on most people. That's all that matters. But here's the thing: such black magic does not last for long. For 3 years maximum is effective. After the 3 years, you need to come with something else. That's why 2014 it happened. And 2017, there was this investigation, and 2018, they formally said Russia is the perpetrator. They made sure they did it within 3 to 4 years. Why? Because the black magic would work out. Hmm. Now you understand that when a crisis occurs, often the crisis takes 2 to 3 years. And within those 2 or 3 years, a lot of things happen that people otherwise would not have consented to. So that's why I tell you, when if you want to board an aircraft, if you want to board an airplane to go anywhere, send peace out of you and command safety and peace on that aircraft before you enter in. You don't have to do it out loud, but command peace and safety on that aircraft and its crew and its passengers before you board the airplane. Because let's say that there was some blood ritual about to take place because you board that airplane, everyone survives. Or maybe there are so many reprobates on that flight that Holy Spirit doesn't even want you to board that aircraft. So you forget your passport right when you're about to go to the airport, and because that you miss your flight, or you're in the public transport and there's a train delay, you miss your flight, and later you hear that either the aircraft crashed or there was some incident that happened with some of the passengers. When you walk in the resurrection part of Christ, you operate in true safety. Listen, have compassion on the masses, but do not let the masses drain you in their misfortune. Yes, black magic is used on the masses. Trauma rituals are used, okay? But nevertheless, the masses have the ability to see through it and to say enough is enough. And too often the masses get along because the trauma bond that develops feels comfortable. They develop comfort in the dysfunction. They develop comfort in the trauma. So now they invest in the trauma. That also happens a lot. Not just about catching an airplane. Let's say you're driving. You have your driver's license when you're driving a car. Before you leave the house to get into your car and drive, command peace. Take spiritual possession of your car and command all danger to flee from you on the road. Do that. Maybe that day you're about to drive your car and there was a truck about to hit you. You don't know. But because you commanded peace out of you, where the truck is stuck. Or maybe it was someone about to suicide jump on the highway. But because you commanded peace out of you, that individual faints before he reaches the bridge. Learn to operate in the resurrection power at all times. Look, in this live stream, I use verifiable facts. There were some rumors I mentioned. I also admit those were rumors. My conclusion is based on years of observation about this case. And there are obvious things about this case that people don't want to address. Well, I just addressed them. It was a blood sacrifice ritual. Think about it. If there is a province of a country where there is rebellion and military conflict, the last thing you do as an airline is to fly near that zone of conflict. Why do you keep flying above an area that has conflict in it? Because, A, that's not something you can say just neglect. That is something planned. Simple as that. As simple as that. So understand this. When society is about to crumble, the satanic agents will do blood sacrifice to mold the people back together as a unit. And the public wants to be a unit so they can have ease in daily life. So they don't want to look at the bigger picture. They don't want to see through anything. Oh, Rashid, you mean to tell me that there were Dutch folks willing to get their own Dutch people killed just so that they can face ease in daily life? Yes, I said it. It's not only Dutch, it happens worldwide. You have French people doing to French people. You have Canadians doing to Canadians. You have South Africans doing to South Africans. You have Chinese doing to Chinese. It's a worldly thing. It is a worldly thing. What we do about these things is that we walk in the resurrection power at all times. So it's almost an hour. That is what I wanted to reveal about this whole case over here. I didn't go into all the inconsistencies about this incident. It's enough to conclude that it was a blood sacrifice to give ease to the public. Because when the public doesn't get the relief, they lose their mind. And yes, worldlings are more than willing to comply with such crimes if that means that they can have an easy daily life. They'll do it. There are some who would say, no, I'm not going to do this, go so far, but in general, they are willing to do it. Some say, Rashid, there will be a cover up that involves too many people. So, what about Nazi Germany? How many people were involved in that? Oh, a big portion of the population in Europe was involved in it. Yeah, Nazi Germany was a big conspiracy, but hey, it happened and there were so millions of people in on it because they all want to have the relief. So, hey, take it all out on those Ashkenazi Jews and all those other unwanted people. Hey, we can have our ease. Hate to say it, but folks that believe absurdities are willing to commit atrocities. They don't even realize what they're doing. As simple as that. Oh, and there were a lot of women also involved in the mass killings that happened in the Second World War. But young women, women in the late teens and in the early 20s who were involved in it. Some were nurses, even. But A, folks won't talk about that. It doesn't fit the feminist narrative that men ruin the world, so they won't talk about it. So, do not fight people who don't want to look at the bigger picture. Do not argue with them. Don't try to convince them. Suggest onto them the more is going on. If they don't show any interest, want to find out what goes on, leave them alone. They're not worthy to convince. They're only turned on you because now, because of you, they need to face reality. They're going to turn out. They're going to have narcissistic rage towards you, and that's going to lead to danger. Don't do that. If you have any questions about this topic that I've addressed, please let me know in the live chat now. If you have to leave, you can leave. It's not a problem. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. All right. I'll wait for 2 more minutes. If I don't get any questions, I'll close down the live stream. And another thing, don't just look at big events. I already explained what we can do as individual believers about this. Walk in the resurrection power. That's all we have. Because worldlings don't want to submit to Christ and walk in actual safety. So they're going to be kicked around, and and a lot of them are going to be sacrificed. Some on the short term, some on the long term. Pagans have relief from danger, but they don't have actual safety. It's only believers that have the resurrection power, so through safety, that we can act upon. Till the day Jesus Christ comes back, there's going to be such blood sacrifices. So, hold on. Oh, before I close, the idea that the Russian Federation or Russia wants to be involved with a group of rebels that didn't even come up with a plan for independence and they were willing to shoot down aircrafts out of the sky, out of the blue, that would harm Russia's reputation. And even the people living in those rebellious areas would say, why should we trust Russia? Russia can't even discern the people they're supporting. So the whole story of Russia doing it does not add up. No, the blood sacrifice are to peace society. The public is upset because it can't escape. So the public is about to escalate to one another and prevent people from turning on one another. You give them some trauma to give them relief. That's what it is. It's fallen mankind has this blood thirst to explode on others because they want to escape life. It's fallen mankind has this deep-rooted sadness that they because that they don't want to face. So it's fallen mankind that demands appeasement through narcissistic abuse. Yes, anytime society is about to crumble, I'm not talking about community, I'm talking about society. Anytime this relief structure called society is about to crumble, or anytime too many scandals come out and the public's about to lose it, you're going to see blood sacrifices. Boxing and rough sports like hockey or rugby, they are loved. Why? Because it gives people a substitute for actual violence. I'm not saying that playing rugby and all those things are evil. No, you can play rough sports, but the reason why the mass love rough sports is because they can choose a side and they can get a narcissistic high by seeing their team kicking the other team. That's why football became a professional sport worldwide. That's why you have international professional sports. That's why you have the World Cup or the European Cup. For that reason. That's why those professional athletes or sports people get so much money for their career. But sports are not a long term appeaser for the darkness in fallen mankind. Actual fellow human beings, their own getting hurt and killed, is what gives fallen mankind this narcissistic relief that gives them ease. It's like a high. Adeptus Astartes asks a question about something that's going on. I agree with you on this. That's all I'm about to say. So the YouTube algorithm does not bother my channel. I agree with you. Don't let me even start about the quick fix they've been forcing on the world. So there's too much wrong with that. So understand this. Anytime the public doesn't want to face their sexual dysfunction or their social um, awkwardness, especially sexual dysfunction, anytime the public does want to see their sexual dysfunction as a community, they're going to lose it. You're going to see more child abuse, more child molestation. You're going to see more spousal abuse, more domestic violence. And yep, then the pagan elite is going to think, you know what? We need to appease them, so we need to have some bodies hit in the ground right now. And that's what happens. And that's what goes on in Ukraine right now, too. But is Russia invading another country where mainly Russian people live, hurting other Russian people? So Russia is sending Russian soldiers to hurt their own Russian people in another country. Because why did they focus on Kiev and the parts where mainly ethnic Ukrainians live? Why they focus mainly on the areas where there are other ethnic Russians living? Because blood sacrifice only works when you kill your own. It's killing your own that gives you the gratification as if you're God. It's this God gratification, this high as if you are in control that gives ease to the public. So blood sacrifice only works if you kill your own. If you kill someone, if you kill from another group, you are seen as a coward you are. But if you kill your own, that's seen as something to be proud of. Being great in history books simply means that you're able to sacrifice and kill your own. Blood sacrifice works only when you kill your own. And that's what the Russian Federation is doing right now in Ukraine. Claiming they're there to help out Ukrainians to get delivered from the Nazis, the neo Nazis. But anyway, I rather explain this to you. Militarism is all about traumatizing the women, and the traumatized women will traumatize their sons, and this mother son trauma is what keeps the political structure in place. That's what militarism is all about, and that's what goes on right now. Alpha Room Studio says, or know people in the area where you are traveling for, you get there. That's a good thing to do, but you can't always know people ahead. Sometimes you just, or look for a believer online that lives there. That can also be something. If you go travel to another country that you haven't been before, send peace out of you and please research the country briefly before. Stay in the tourist areas first. And if you want to go outside the tourist areas, find some team to travel with. Don't do it by yourself. What I did in Guatemala and Central America, I do not recommend anyone to replicate that. What I did then was me covered by assassin angelic beings to keep me safe. Yes, I had angelic beings appointed by the Heavenly Father that were armed and ready to assassinate any creep that came too close to me. That's why when I was in Guatemala and traveling in Central America, none of the drug cartels, none of those criminal creeps even dared to get too close to me. That's due to the high anointing I have. But I do not want you to do whatever I'm doing. There's certain things I can get away with that you can't get away with. So if you want to go to another place you've never been before, all right, stay in a tourist area. Don't just get into any taxi or Uber and get a team over there. Okay, can everyone pray for Gonzalo Lira? Can everyone please decree the destruction of this satanic bullshit they're doing over there? Please. Please do it now in Christ Jesus' mighty name. I command in Christ Jesus' mighty name that all the horrors of the Russian Federation and the Republic of Ukraine and this whole situation is exposed now in Christ Jesus' mighty name. And I command believers to take over in those areas, to prosper and spread life and abundance in the earth. I command healing for the Russians, Ukrainians, and the rest of Europeans that are harmed by this. Now, through believers in Christ Jesus' mighty name. All right. Thank you. Okay, William, you'll be able to get a Spanish passport easily, so that's not a problem. I believe you can get dual nationality with Australia. I don't think that's an issue either. You can even get the British passport, but I don't think that's really beneficial for you. Oh, and don't forget, you have a whole sector of Neptune worshippers in Ukraine. So Ukraine also uses the trident as um, as their coat of arms. So yeah, that's also taking place over there. So there are a lot of violation of human rights happening right now over there by the devil worshippers. But anyway, that's all on their feet. Believers in Ukraine also need to rise up. Praise the Lord. Thank you all for being here. Please practice what I'm teaching you here. Keep on agreeing with Christ. Be at peace, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.